Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we have to take a look today at the St. Louis Blues. There's some talk about what the Blues may do going into this year's deadline. The Blues look like a team to watch for here in 2022. They may be going on a cup run. They're currently sitting in the second wild card spot in the Western Conference, but they have high aspirations for this season, and you're going to figure out why today. So the first big headline is from the fourth period. The St. Louis Blues have tossed a few lines to the trade waters in hopes of landing a veteran defenseman this season. The Blues are believed to be willing to part with their first round draft pick for the right player. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at, and we're going to follow that up here. So this is from Jeremy Rutherford, a hockey insider. The Blues GM Doug Armstrong on Craig Berube's contract. Craig is a good coach, and we will deal with his contract behind closed doors. Assume both sides will sit down when the time is right. It is not a point of concern. Okay, interesting there. And this was more talk on Tarasenko. So Tarasenko update. The way I understand the situation is it'll be readdressed in the summer. The most recent information I have is that Tarasenko's trade request still stands, but both sides understand that with team and Tarasenko playing well, dealing him now just doesn't make sense. That was from Jeremy Rutherford. And then this is another one here from David Pagnotta. The St. Louis Blues are willing to part with their first-round pick for the right player. We already talked about that. And this is the last one here from Elliot Friedman. The goaltender that the Oilers like is Blues goaltender Ville Husso. Okay, so that's a lot to take in. We'll kind of break it down one by one. So the first thing is the Blues willing to part with their first-round pick. There was a lot of talk. That was a big talking point last week for the Blues. They're willing to trade their first-round pick. So what is your thoughts on that? Because I think the Blues, again, it's one of those things. I think in any decent player you're talking about in a trade, right? The trade value right now for rental defensemen, guys like Ben Chiarot, Mark Giordano, those guys are all going to cost you at least a first and a third round pick. That is the starting price. So if that's the case, the Blues would be able to do that. So that is definitely something to watch, because I think as we get closer to the deadline, I think players like Giordano, specifically Ben Chiarot, I think he really fits what Craig Berube has there. But Mark Giordano, I think, is another guy who would definitely fit the mold for the Blues. So those two guys in particular are standout players that I look at for the Blues. But there are going to be other defenseman names that we definitely hear about linked to the Blues going over there. Because right now they've got a pretty good group. You've got Colin Parayko. How I forget his name. Torrey Krug, Colton Parayko, and Justin Falk. Those three guys are really good. And then you have that Nico Nicola, who is pretty good, but I think they'd like to add, let's be honest, if you added a Ben Chiarot or a Giordano for a playoff run, I think they would take that. So that's kind of how things are looking at on defense in terms of, I think that's where they're going to address this. They could add a forward as well, absolutely, but I think you look at their defense, I think that is the bigger priority. Now, on the Craig Berube thing, I think this is something that's interesting because we actually heard that Olli Jokinen's name could come into the situation as maybe a new voice in the NHL management game starting next year. So he's currently right now overseas in Finland as a head coach. He could find himself over here in North America probably very easily next summer, this summer. So if that's the case, could the Blues, a former Blues player like Olli Jokinen, could he find a fit there if they don't get things done with Craig Berube? There's obviously that there's that reality, but I think they really like Berube. But I think they're trying to use leverage here, trying to find names that they could be linked to in order to keep Berube around longer term. The Tarasenko thing is interesting because we've seen the two different ends of the spectrum. A guy gets injured, doesn't get healed the correct way or the way he wants to between Jack Eichel and Tarasenko. They handled it in totally different situations. Tarasenko took the route of, I'm going to go out there and play, and I'm going to make my value worth I am so I can move, while Jack Eichel said, well, I'm just going to sit out till you trade me, so you can't do anything. So I think Tarasenko has embraced this season as he wants to prove to the league that he's worth whatever he is worth. So I think that trade will be coming here very shortly. But based off of these reports, like we talked about, it sounds like this is a deal that will get done in the summertime. And probably the same teams in the Northeast will be in that conversation. Now, another team I would throw in that mix, I would say the Islanders, Rangers, and Devils. I would even say the Flyers. I think the Flyers, if they want to get a quick retool, you throw in a guy like Tarasenko, I think there's a real possibility he could end up in Philadelphia. So, again, something to look at. All those teams are going to be in the mix. So that'll be interesting. They're willing to trade their first-round pick. Ville Husso was another interesting name. He's had his rough, had his rough patches since his time coming to St. Louis. But Ville Husso has put together a really nice season behind Jordan Binnington, and has been a really reliable backup. So the Blues, do they want to lose him for nothing in the summer, but they get another playoff run out of him? Or do they trade him, make sure they get some assets for him, and then whoever's behind him comes up, kind of thing? That's kind of the disparity that Doug Armstrong is going to have to deal with in St. Louis. So that is it for the St. Louis Blues. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Blues? What do you think of where they're at? What do you think of what they're doing? I think they're doing some really good things there. I think Doug Armstrong has really, from the 2019 team to now, done a pretty good job at filling some holes. There was a lot of talk from last year to, even 2021, the last 2 years. It's been rough since they won that Stanley Cup, but it sounds like they're kind of rebounding this year, and they're starting to get better. Jordan Kyrou was one of the big talks at the All-Star game. Really exciting to have him. You obviously have guys like Braden Shen, Ryan O'Reilly, right? So there is definitely some good pieces to this team. Yet you also have your down spots, like your defense is a little bit lacking. Jordan Binnington signed to that extension last summer that kicked in. He's really underperformed this year. So that's the kind of stuff where we're gonna see this team go, they're gonna fork off in one of two different ways. They're gonna return to what they were in 2019, maybe not a cup, let's be honest, but back to a playoff team, or it's rebuild time and we have to blow this ship up. So we're gonna see that here over the next, I would say the next 12 to 20 months, we're going to get an idea of where the Blues are at in that regard. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.